Hello there everyone, welcome back to the channel and welcome once again to The Walking Dead Saints and Sinners Chapter 2 Retribution. Now today I've tried to capture 3 identical slices of gameplay, one from each of the different versions of this game. Now first up we have the Quest 2 version, which has been publicly available since December of 2022, I believe. This is still, as of recording this, the only version that consumers can buy. I also captured gameplay from the PCVR final build, which I've been given access to a few days before release, and some more gameplay from the PlayStation VR 2 version of the game, which again, I was given access to by Skydance a few days ahead of release. Now, PCVR and PlayStation VR are both out on the 21st of this month, so as of uploading this video, it's 2 days away. Now first up, we're starting with the Quest 2. That's what you're seeing right here. This is Quest 2 gameplay running natively inside the headset, standalone, and this is the version I've played the most. I've sunk about 6 hours into this version, maybe 6.5, and for what it's worth, it's a very good port of this game. Runs pretty well, and considering the size and the scope of the game, it's pretty decent for a standalone headset. But as you can see, it isn't particularly pretty. This version of the game has taken a bit of a beating, really, in terms of visual fidelity. There's a huge amount of fogging. The draw distances are pretty abysmal. I was just testing there to see if more or less wine bottles and things are interactive in this version when compared to the PCVR version. I think I was actually just throwing the wrong wine bottles around. Inside you can see that the lighting is pretty flat on the Quest 2 version. Shadows don't look great. When you're in areas like this, for the most part, it's very serviceable. Again, for a standalone VR game, performance is strong, and the visual is, you know, it's enough to immerse you into that world. But when we move on to the PCVR version and the PlayStation VR version momentarily, you will see that Quest 2 is seriously lagging behind. Sorry, I'm just in a bit of a firefight here. And I'm not particularly accurate today. Should have been hitting them headshots, but yeah, just wasn't hitting the headshots. Now this area here on the PCVR and PSVR2, sorry, in that fountain there's like a plant. In this hallway there's dead bodies, there's blood splatters on the wall. None of that is there on the Quest 2. There's also a dead person in this room with a gun in the other versions, but there's nothing here on Quest. There are also still some bugs and glitches that are quite easy to stumble across on the Quest 2 version. You can see it just there, the floor disappearing. As soon as you step outside, this kind of thick fog kind of descends around you. It's like you've just entered into Silent Hill. And yeah, we knew it wasn't going to be the best looking version of the game. Gameplay wise, it is absolutely identical to PCVR and PlayStation VR 2. PSVR 2 does have some really, really nice little touches that neither of the other versions have, but I'll get onto that when we get to the PlayStation VR 2 version. Now, if this was the only version of the game you had access to, because perhaps you only had access to a standalone VR headset, you're still going to have the same gameplay experience, but it's very lacking in detail. You know, to get this game running on standalone headsets, they've had to cut back on a huge amount of details. Now here, I just wanted to see what the muzzle flash was like on the guns. It's basically non-existent. No damage to the floor there. It does just look quite flat. You know, there's no muzzle flash there really that you can see. And these are all kinds of things that we have to accept when you're trying to get these large-scale games running on standalone hardware. For some reason, I couldn't give 2 thumbs up. That second hand would not give a thumbs up. No idea why. No idea why. So there we have it. This is the Quest 2 version of the game as of the 19th of March 2023. It is serviceable. All the gameplay elements are here. All the interactions are the same as the other versions. But in terms of visual fidelity, it is very washed out, very foggy, very low resolution, and a lot of the little details that make the world feel alive have been completely removed. Okay, moving on now to the PlayStation VR2 version of the game. Now, seeing that footage back to back, seeing Quest 2 cut straight to PSVR2, it feels a bit mean. It feels like I'm being cruel and trying to make a point or trying to make fun of the Quest 2. I'm really not. I absolutely love the Quest 2, and it is a miracle that a game like this even runs on that standalone hardware at all. So huge props to the Quest 2. The big advantage that the Quest 2 has over PCVR and PSVR2 is it's such a low friction experience. For the majority of consumers, you just throw that headset on and within seconds you can load into an amazing immersive VR game or experience. So the Quest 2 dominates in terms of ease of use, but when it comes to visuals and atmosphere, just look at this. Just look how incredible the PSVR2 version of this game looks. It looks phenomenal. The shadows, the extra level of detail, the resolution, the draw distance, all that fog is gone. The shadows are much stronger, although I am noticing right now watching this footage that the shadow on that zombie wasn't fantastic. A little bit kind of, it was phasing in and out of existence. So there are probably still some things that need to be worked out. I'm playing pre-day one patch. Almost every game these days has a day one patch, so I expect the PSVR2 version of the game to have a day one patch. Now, one other thing to bear in mind, for some reason the PSVR2 version of this game captures in 30 FPS. So there's a noticeable drop in smoothness when you go even from the Quest 2 footage into this PSVR2 footage. Obviously it doesn't look like this inside the headset. It isn't running at 30 FPS. I do believe it's 90. It feels incredibly smooth on PlayStation VR 2. I think there's a few things that have really surprised me about the PSVR 2 version of this game. The first is just the sharpness of everything on that OLED screen. The OLED of the PSVR 2 is stunning. The deep blacks in some of the darker areas in this game make the game terrifying again, and I've played this game a ton. You know, it doesn't really spook me anymore, but the PSVR 2 version nails the atmosphere because of how deep and dark those blacks are, and then the colours really pop. The torch really cuts through the darkness. The second thing about the PSVR 2 version that has been very, very impressive is the performance. I felt no frame drops, no ghosting, no blurriness, nothing. It's just been an absolutely smooth, sharp, solid gameplay experience so far on PSVR 2. No drops at all. And I have even noticed quite a few drops on the PCVR version running on my 4090 PC. So the optimization of the PSVR 2 version is absolutely phenomenal. The last thing that I think makes the PSVR 2 version the best way potentially to play this game, it's the triggers. It's the controllers. PSVR 2 controllers are turning out to be the absolute star of the show when it comes to that VR hardware. The adaptive triggers, the way they resist against you when you're holding a pistol or a shotgun or an assault rifle, whatever it might be, it doesn't sound like much, especially if you haven't experienced it yourself. But as soon as you have played with triggers like that kind of pull against you and there's a bit of pressure and you really need to apply additional force to pull the trigger of a handgun or a shotgun, it makes it hard to go back to games and hardware that don't have those features. It's actually crazy. Now, this little corridor here, as I said when I looked at the Quest 2 footage, it was empty. In the PSVR 2 version, you've got blood splatters, you've got all this trash on the floor. As I say, here's that person that wasn't there on the Quest. The whole person's just gone. And on the PSVR 2, they seem to have fixed the bug with this door, so you're not getting that disappearing floor. And you do get all these nice effects on PSVR 2, like the rolling smoke. I mean, look at that. It looks absolutely fantastic. Now, again, I wasn't expecting the Quest 2 version to be able... I don't know why I thought that broken shotgun was going to do anything to that zombie. That was just ridiculous. I wasn't going into this thinking the Quest 2 version was going to compete with the PlayStation VR2 version in terms of its visuals. That wasn't the point. The point is really just to show all 3 versions of the game, talk about their merits, and allow you guys to make a decision on which version you want to get if you do have access to multiple VR devices. Now, the PSVR2 version, I'll say it right now, is my favourite version of the game. Optimization-wise, it is solid, absolutely solid, and the adaptive resistive triggers are phenomenal. It isn't perfect. There are still some weird things going on PlayStation VR 2. You'll see it in a moment. There's something strange going on with the fog. Here, the gun, compared to the Quest 2 version, is leaving bullet holes. Got a bit more of a muzzle flash. Details like that make the world feel alive. It's absolutely sublime. Really, really impressed with this version of the game. I think we'll get into the strange fog bit in a second. I'm going to look down there and I'm going to see that the fog seems to be tied to the way that you move your head. There, we get it. We kind of capture it. There you go. Can you see the way they're kind of moving with my head movements? It's strange. It's almost like a 2D image that moves whenever you move left and right. This has been the PlayStation VR 2 version of the game. I can give 2 thumbs up here. Not sure why I couldn't on the Quest 2. But yeah, just such a more vibrant, detailed, alive-feeling world. The details are stunning. The shadows are stunning. Colours, resolution. It's all looking great. Oh, look at that. That was cool. One of the coolest things I've ever done. How did I pull that off? Yeah, if you have a PlayStation VR 2, I do think this is currently the strongest version of the game. But we're going to jump over to PCVR in just a moment, and I'll let you decide whether maybe that's the better version of the game. I cocked that right up, didn't I? Absolutely cocked that right up. But it's okay. Brought a shotgun as a backup. And finally, we're on to the PCVR version of the game. Now, immediately, you can see that additional smoothness. You know, this is capturing via Oculus Mirror, and we are getting a 60 FPS capture here. It's a real shame. I don't know why the PSVR 2 version is only capping at 30 FPS. Really not sure why. It's the first PSVR 2 game that I've encountered where that has been an issue. Really, really odd, but it is what it is. Now, you'll notice that the PSVR 2 version and the PC versions are very, very similar in terms of visual. You'd really have to be going into some Digital Foundry level nitpicking to kind of find the actual differences, and that certainly isn't me. All I can speak from is my own experience playing this. I chopped off her arm there, but I was going for the head. Completely and utterly messed that up, and I messed that up. Now he's just a zombie with a knife in his back, and that's, you know, it's not ideal. You got to go for the head. That's what kills them. Now, I was playing this with the Quest Pro. That is my, I guess, highest caliber PCVR headset. That's the best PCVR compatible headset that I own, and it did look very, very sharp. The black's not quite as strong as they were on the PlayStation VR 2. That OLED screen really does some amazing things for the darker areas of this game. But one thing that the PCVR version did a lot better, or the Quest Pro did a lot better, I should say, is whenever you're on a black screen with white text, there's no real light bleeding. You get quite a bit of bleed with the PSVR 2 in this game, in the initial menus, and as I say, whenever there's a black loading screen perhaps with white text, the text itself bleeds out quite a lot on PlayStation VR 2, whereas it didn't at all on Quest Pro. So that was a really nice thing to see. Not really beneficial in terms of the gameplay, but it was nice to see that there was less light bleed, because I know that will be a factor and something that annoys certain VR users. So worth pointing out here. But visually, it looked almost identical on PCVR. Now, this is running on my 4090 system, and everything is absolutely maxed out. So the game is running on the highest graphical preset. And as I say, I am using the Quest Pro. In terms of visuals, just raw visuals, it looked almost identical on PCVR versus PSVR 2. Now that's actually really, really impressive for the PSVR2 when you really think about it, because to get this level of visual fidelity, I personally am running this on, an expensive PC with a £1,000 VR headset. Whereas when you compare that to the PlayStation VR2, you're looking at a £550 headset and a £500 PS5. So PS5 is doing some serious work with this game. They've really optimized it to get it looking and running amazingly well on that platform. But if you do have a crazy high-end VR headset, so maybe you've got a Vive, maybe you've got an Index, maybe you've got a Pimax or a Vario, you're going to have an incredible time with this game maxed out on the highest settings. At that point, it will probably start to blow away PSVR2. But for me personally, with my setup and a Quest Pro, it was a very similar experience. However, the PSVR2 still had that edge for me in terms of gameplay, purely because of those adaptive, resistance-based triggers. It's a huge deal. And I really do hope future VR headsets, future VR tech, take something like that into consideration, because it does a massive amount for immersion. And I must admit, going from using the PSVR2 a lot, and I have been recently, and then going back to any other VR headset that I own, feels a little bit hollow. Feels like it's missing something when those triggers don't kind of resist against you. Now, interestingly, not as much fog on the PC VR version. There is as you stepped out, but on the PlayStation VR2 version, a lot of that fog was actually coming into the building and rolling through the door, but it didn't seem to be doing that on PCVR, and you could see that just then in the footage. But overall, visually, almost identical on PCVR running at the max settings on a 4090 using a Quest Pro versus a PSVR2 running obviously off of the PlayStation 5, and that's really impressive. Now, one thing I will mention, I kind of lightly touched on it earlier in this video, but when I was playing on PCVR, frame drops were fairly noticeable. Moving through areas, especially when I'm spinning left and right using the thumbstick to turn, I could notice frame drops. You can't really see it in the video at all, but I could feel it. I could feel it when playing, and that was something I didn't get at all on PlayStation VR 2. I didn't even get it really on the Quest 2. Quest 2 and PlayStation VR 2, performance was solid. And don't get me wrong, performance is great on PC VR, but I could feel those frame drops sneaking in every now and then whenever you move into a new area, and whenever you're spinning the character a little bit too fast, or action gets quite hectic, or you're running down the street. Just feel it every now and then. You feel a little bit of a kind of a little bit of a lag, a little bit of a frame drop, a little bit of a frame skip perhaps. So it doesn't feel quite as well optimized as the PlayStation VR 2 version or the Quest 2 version even, but the Quest 2 version is optimized to hell. They have to hit a certain frame rate to even make it to the Quest store, so that makes a lot of sense, and with the version looking like it does, again, makes a lot of sense. And that's kind of it. This has been all three versions of The Walking Dead Saints and Sinners Chapter 2 running in their kind of final build formats. I'm sure all three versions will continue to get updates, but for now, that was a terrible throw. For now, this is what they all look like. Personally, for me, the PSVR 2 is coming out on top because of the small gameplay advantages that it has in terms of the adaptive triggers and the deep blacks of that OLED screen, which really lend to a spookier experience, especially when you're out and about at nighttime, scavenging, and just trying to survive. But all three versions of the game are comparable in terms of the content that's in them. So no matter where you play this game, you're going to be having the same awesome Walking Dead Saints and Sinners experience that you would get on a different platform. You're just getting a different level of visual fidelity and detail, which will lend to the immersion for some people. I know some people will struggle to feel immersed in that Quest 2 version of the game. I do fully understand that. PCVR, however, and PSVR2 both looking absolutely stunning. The worlds feel alive, and the PSVR2 for me just has the edge because of those adaptive triggers. Hopefully you've enjoyed. this little look at the game running on all 3 platforms. Let me know down in the comments which version you'll be playing, or which version you have been playing. Maybe you've been playing the Quest 2 version already. And I'll see you very soon for another one. Take care of yourselves, guys. And yeah, see you later.